let's make a start. Oh, I've lost my A and my H. Look, they've dropped onto the other line. I'm Anna, and that's Sarah, not Anne and Sarah. In case you haven't been to one of our drop-ins before, you know us from the group, but we do these every 2 weeks. We tend to follow a theme, and 1 week, and then the next week we do general, and the general ones have a lot more opportunity for question and answer. There's not usually 99 people in there. Okay, so we're going to be thinking about what happens now, right? This is going to be most relevant to people who have children who are in statutory education, so are moving into reception, moving into year 7, or moving between infant and junior, or one of the phases in the 3-tier system, because you should all have had your phase transition updated EHCPs by now. If you're here because you're getting ahead of the game and you've got post 16, your date is not until the 31st of March. You wouldn't expect necessarily to have anything yet, but feel free to listen. But we're not really covering the post 16 date right now. We're talking to people that already have their updated plans and know what the outcome is. So you can see from the slide there's 4 outcomes really. Come February the 16th. The first one in that top left-hand corner is that you're happy with the school named. I'm guessing that there's probably not many people here who are happy with the school named, because I don't know why they feel the need to come. But, ultimately, if there are people here who are sitting with the school named wondering what happens next, I mean, you celebrate. Feel free to share your success in the group. It can get a bit heavy sometimes, can't it, with all the difficulties. So do please share successes as well. If you're happy with what you have had named in your school placement, then do share your success so we can celebrate with you. But there's a little bit of work still to do. When you're ready, it doesn't need to be done immediately, but it is worth checking as well that you're happy with sections B and F. It's very easy to look at a school place and move on. But remember that the provision your child is going to get, the provision you can make sure they get, is only what is quantified and specified in section B and F. The needs are B and the provision is F. So particularly if you've got mainstream school named, or a resource base at a mainstream school named, or a maintained special school named, because I'm saying those schools because those resources are particularly tight. So it is more unlikely that those schools are going to be providing stuff that isn't in section F of the EHCP. So check them. Use our draft checking webinar if you're not sure how to check B and F. Use our blogs and our YouTubes for help in that. And if you've got serious concerns, or you want to have a thorough job done on that, then by all means contact us and ask for some help. We'll link all the resources we're talking about at the end. We're not just going to leave you thinking, well, how do I find those? But sorry, even if you are here because you're happy with your school name, there are some things you can do just to make sure that your child is going to get the very best provision in their new school in September. So let's move on to the other option. You're not happy with the school named. You've got the plan, the updated plan. You're not happy with your school named. Well, you've got 2 choices, and that is consider giving the school named a go, at least until the next annual review, so at least for the next year. And that is an option. It's hard, isn't it? Because as parents, you set your mind to something, you set your heart on something, you get a plan, and you find that that's not actually what's been named, and that is a bit tricky. But try and take that step back and think, is this school going to be okay? If the answer is yes, you might want to give it a go. Or maybe you've had an absolutely horrendous fight to this point, or you've got other stuff going on. It is okay just to say, we're going to give it a go. And we say until the next annual review, because of course, every annual review, you get the right to ask for a new school placement and to go to appeal if you're not happy with the one that's been named. So That's always an option. It's not forever necessarily if you do give it a go. But it's definitely something to think about. Your other option is to appeal. If you look at that school and you just think, absolutely not. I know Sarah and I see them all the time. If it's an absolute no way, then your only option is to appeal. And B&F needs to be critical in that as well. You do need to take a step back. If you're going to appeal, you again need to take a step back and look at B&F and look at your evidence, because school placement is named based on sections B and F. If you're not sure whether a wrong school has been named because B and F aren't right, you will need to check B and F. And again, you need to do that. I know it's not draft EHCP, but you can do that using our draft checking webinar and our draft checking blogs. It's the same process to check a draft plan as it is a final plan, exactly the same. So just because it says draft checking in the title of the blog or the video clip, it's still about checking an EHCP. It will suit you absolutely fine. But yeah, and appealing is an evidence-based process. I'm trying to think, Sarah. It's a long time ago, last spring term, last summer term, when all those transition appeals were going on. But I can't say for definite, but parents won through all the parents that we supported through working documents or through appeal, got the school place named that they wanted. And I'm thinking back to the group, more widely on the group. It was I mean, I can't say that it was unanimous, but it was pretty strong, wasn't it? That parents that appealed got school places changed. What's your feeling on it?
I think it's, I know one that we have one family we've supported after that period of time. So they weren't, they came to us after that, and they didn't have their draft checked, they didn't have their EHCP checked. Their EHCP went into the system and came out the same way.
And school placement wasn't changed.
The only way, I mean, if you go on to the group, I've put it as a featured post, and I do repost it, but I wrote quite a lengthy explanation of why B plus F equals I, and the reasons why it's so imperative. If you never do anything at all, but regarding your EHCP, but the only thing you ever do is that you check B and F. That is the most critical thing that anybody with an EHCP can do, because we have never, ever seen an EHCP that has not needed to be checked. And Anna and I have been doing this since the late 1980s. It's a very long time. And you may not have updated professional evidence, and we understand that that's something that is expensive. Please do not expect your local authority to provide you with updated reports unless that's specified in your section F already, that you will receive updated SALT, particularly, and OT for an annual review. You are highly unlikely to get an educational psychology report funded a second time by the local authority. And yes, all these things cost a lot of money, and we completely understand that doesn't grow on trees completely. But if you don't have that, at the very, very least, make sure your EHCP is legally enforceable.
Yeah,
because if it's
whichever route, whether you're going to give the school a go or whether you're going to appeal, you do need, if you're going to appeal, you need to know what's wrong with B and F, not just what's wrong with the school place, but what's wrong with B and F as well. Yeah,
because if you don't, you've got this document, it won't be put in place. And I have an annual review coming up that I'm supporting a family with. They've said to me, but my EHCP went to tribunal. It did, but certain elements of that EHCP have not been delivered, and they've not been delivered because it's written in a way that gives the school the option. This intervention should happen, but it should But then again, if you haven't got time, don't worry about it, because there's nothing there saying that this must and it will. So it's absolutely critical. You can't just look at your EHCP and go, and people have this, like they achieve a specialist independent score and think, great, specialist independent, that's exactly what I wanted. And then they come back to us and say, but we're not getting the OT, we're not having sensory circuits, or we're not having the speech and language therapy direct intervention being undertaken. And that's because they may have achieved the placement type and the school of their choice, but their BNF is still not specific enough for that direct intervention to be made. And that can come as quite a surprise. And at that point, we can rectify that at your next annual review. But if you are going to appeal for a particular school or a particular school type, do not waste this opportunity for an expedited appeal to get that done really, really quickly, because you can have this in place by September of this year, as opposed to waiting potentially for an annual review and that taking you over a year, maybe 14 months for that to happen.
That's a good point, actually, Sarah, because when you're weighing up that balance of, do we give it a go or do we appeal now? If you appeal now, your appeal will be heard in the summer term. If you wait until the next annual review, the next annual review is going to be not until November, December time anyway. And then that appeal, if you put in an appeal then, you'll be getting that EHCP about February, March time, 2027. And then if you put in an appeal, that appeal is going to take about 14 months currently, because it won't be a fast track appeal for phase transfer. So if you are thinking about appealing, do it now. But the drawback is, if you're really not ready to appeal, it's going to be quick. Your appeal isn't going to be a 14-month wait. You haven't got time to start preparing your evidence if you appeal now.
And you haven't got time to get new professional evidence, which is why, to track back when we were talking at the preparation for phase transition back in September, October, that's when we were saying, if you think you need updated professional evidence, now is the key time. Because if you're looking at your sections BNF and you're thinking, actually, this is a bit bad, but I haven't got anything new, the likelihood is you won't get that in time, because there is no time left. And of course, you're then looking at the dates of that professional evidence. Is your professional evidence in date? Can you take this to an appeal? And will a judge recognise that and say, absolutely, this is a really true description of your child's needs, and it's a true description because this report is less than 2 years old, and or this report is not a diagnostic report. So a diagnostic report is really good at identifying your child's needs. It's very generic in the main in identifying the special educational provision for those needs, because it's come from a medical or clinical, not an educational. So you need to make sure that if you have diagnostic reports that are identifying need, that you have shown that to an educational psychologist so they can marry that up and fill those gaps and say, okay, we've identified this need. How does this need present in school? What do we need to do to enable this child to reach their potential, given this need, this difficulty that this child is presenting with?
Yeah. Okay. Let's move. We will come back to appealing. I know we haven't told you how to appeal. We will come back to that. But I know there's another chunk of people sitting out there. I think that has been really obvious in the group, that there are a chunk sitting out there who haven't received their updated plan yet. Some of them I know are already in appeal. And I know they're being told by the case officer, the appeal case officer, that the reason the local authority haven't updated the plan to name next placement is because they're in appeal, so they don't have to. That's not true. There is no lawful reason not to update by the 15th of February for all statutory school age children in transition the next school. There is no, it's unlawful if they haven't done that. I can guarantee that across the board. The next step is what you do about it. That's slightly more tricky. Yes, I mean, you can email your case officer, but the chances are, if you haven't received anything at all, it's quite likely that your case officer has left and you're sitting unassigned or gone on maternity leave, or
You'll
just
just
not
get
coping
radio
with the job
silence
right now. Yeah.
because that
It's
they will be looking at it, and it's another surprise for some people when we say to them, your case officer will have about 300 children on their caseload, and at this particular point, some of them are just, I can't do this, this is too much, and you will get radio silence, and they book annual leave for this particular time. We're in half term anyway. They don't hand their caseload over to anybody else, because that would give somebody else, potentially 600. And if you don't get a response, if you're on radio silence, you have to push that out to your local authority send ops manager, and if you don't get anything back from the send ops manager, then it is Director of Children's Services.
But it's also, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, because it's not always the case, but it's also, if your EHCP has been forgotten and it hasn't been updated, it's highly unlikely that you're going to get a special or specialist school, because the places will have been allocated, or resource base. If you were hoping for one of those schools and you haven't heard, it does make it less likely. So that makes it more likely you've got to get to appeal. So that makes it more important that you get the EHCP quickly. The only ways to get your EHCP quickly, there are two. One is putting a formal complaint using the local authority's online formal complaints process. It's absolutely fine to send one to your Director of Children's Services as well. That can be helpful, but make sure you log the same complaint. You can copy and paste it exactly the same into your local authority's online formal complaints process. And the reason for doing that is because that's a system where it can't be lost. Yeah, it's an automated online system, so they can't ever say didn't arrive, your fault, couldn't press send, must be still sitting in your outbox, whatever reason they come up with. There is a paper trail of it being sent and received and read. That's the first way. The second way is to consider using Judicial Review PAP. Now, we rarely advise Judicial Review PAP because it just ties you up in knots that become £1, £5, £10,000 worth of knots to achieve nothing. But Judicial Review PAP can be effective for this and can be effective quite quickly, but it is going to cost you best part of £1,000, and at least best part of £1,000, and it may, let's face it, that money can probably be better spent using the formal complaints process for free and putting that money towards something else that's more beneficial to your child than paying a solicitor. But I'll leave that with you. Both of those options are there.
And we have had people on the group, sorry Anna to interrupt you, but we have had people on the group saying, should I have done all of this before the 15th of February? No, you can't. You had to wait, because that is the legal deadline. And yes, it was on a Sunday, but local authorities can put out emails on schedules, and that's what they do at Christmas time. That's what they do over the summertime. You can't, if you were waiting and you were waiting and you were waiting, and it got to the Friday and you still hadn't heard, it still wasn't the date, so you still couldn't do anything. You can't do anything with yes, we have to jump through hoops, as we know, for our 15 calendar days to do our draft checks. So all of these things we have to make sure that we do. And yes, local authorities go maverick and do their own thing, and we have got a blog that kind of gives you an explanation. It's not a justification, but it gives you a heads up on what to expect, and these things do happen. With all these things, you can't put your complaints in until you have reached the deadline for the concern that you have.
Absolutely. And for help with how to put in a formal complaint and how to push it through, because obviously, I don't need to tell you, it's not, a formal complaint isn't going to be a magic wand. You are going to have to manage that formal complaint and push it through. or if you're considering PAP, we've got YouTube clips on our YouTube channel and blogs discussing both of those. Definitely look at the formal complaint blog. It will give you some really good tips on how to get your formal complaint through the system successfully. There are a few other things on there to do. And this is for anyone in any of the stages, you know, pick and mix. Definitely keep an eye on the Facebook group. There'll be lots of phase transfer discussion right through now for months and months and months, including people who are going through the appeal process. It's helpful to have other people who are perhaps a few steps ahead of you to be able to see how it's going for them and get information from them. Check out our YouTubes, check out our blogs, check out our webinars. We do have, and we'll come to it, the links later, but we have a webinar which will hold your hand through putting in your appeal. Literally hold your hand. It will talk you through exactly how to do it, and it will provide you with a full and extensive resource bank of templates and examples and everything you'll need to do that successfully. So those are really good places to look. If you need more support, book a meeting with us. We'll put again links out, and I'm sure that Leanne will, these links are already in the group, but Leanne will be putting them out again over coming days. You can book to have your EHCP checked. That can be helpful, particularly. I'm just going to mute everyone again, Sarah. I'm hoping I'm going to be able to unmute you again. Can you unmute? If not, oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, book a check, and particularly if you're thinking about appeal, in fact, anyone, but particularly if you're thinking about appealing, you need to know what's wrong with that EHCP. Okay.
And also, just a quick one on there. Leanne has done a really helpful post, a Canva post that she's put out today, I saw earlier on, that it gives you examples of, like Anna's saying, how to find the information from us. But if you use the search function, which is just like a little magnifying glass, it's in the top corner of the main group page. Because we have been operating on this particular format of our group for some years now, you will find many years worth of phase transition answers and questions and support by using that function. And you may find that you can get a really broad spectrum of support that way as well, that might mirror yours. It might just give you some additional pointers. And that's, I think that's a really good way to sort of get a back catalogue of support for questions that have been answered before.
Yeah. Leanne, I'm sure we'll put this slide out as well, so you've got this, but we just unpick here those resources that we've talked about. So let's follow the pinky colour big box on the right hand side first. This is for people that are not happy with the school named. So if you decide that you're going to give the school a go and wait till the next annual review, it's really important that you start preparing pretty soon for that annual review. It's no good waiting until it arrives and then starting to prepare. So we've got some resources there about annual reviews. We've got annual review blogs, an annual review webinar that will help you. I mean, in the summer term, ideally, even before your child starts, but certainly because you're going to have that annual review in the autumn term. So you've got to start on that, preparing for that pretty quickly. If you decide, if you're not happy with the school name, but you decide you're going to go to appeal, those are the appeal resources, blogs, webinar. Those are the two key ones that will help you. For anyone, but particularly if you're preparing for an annual review or you are preparing for appeal, you need to check your EHCP. So if you haven't had it checked already, or you haven't checked it already, there's a checking blog there, there's a checking webinar there, and you know that we can provide additional support to do that if necessary. The two links for people that haven't received the updated plan yet, that need it, do not sit there. Do you know what else? Don't sit there with a promise from a case officer of, don't worry, it's just because it needs to go to panel. Especially, they do this especially to nursery children, don't they? And
all the
coming into
time.
reception.
all the time.
Mm.
And they tell you it's fine, we had to finalize it, we had to do
Mm.
this because we don't know what we're doing, we don't have anywhere, but we've given you a mainstream school, even though we all know that your child should be in a resource base or a special school or whatever, but we've given you that, but we'll open it up again, it's fine, we're going to talk to panel, we're going to open it up again, and we'll give us some time on it. So people give them time on it. What happens is they give them too much time, you lose your right of appeal, your child goes to the school that's named in section I.
It's heartbreaking. Every June, July, August, September, we're picking up parents, aren't we, who have missed their right of appeal because their case officer promised them that it would go back to panel and be a special school would be named, and it hasn't happened. And you do get it's a fairly long window. You've got 2 months to start the appeal process, but once that 2 months is over, you are stuck. I suppose the other thing just to say as well is that when I'm talking about people who have got an EHCP and they're not happy with the school place, that means if you only have type named as well, it's a real surprise to parents, and I can understand why. Because what is the point of having type named? How does that help? But local authorities are legally allowed to name type. So your final EHCP might say a maintained mainstream school, a maintained special school, an independent special school, unlikely, but probably it will say a maintained special, or a mainstream school. You must appeal if it says type. Again, every year we have loads, particularly they'll put a special school, something vague, a special school, and the parent goes, "Oh, thank goodness!" And they've agreed special school, but they just, and then the case officer says, "Yeah, but we haven't found the right one yet." So the parent goes, "Oh, that's all right. We'll hang on. You've agreed special school. They'll go into special school. You've just got to find the right one. Okay, fine. June comes, July comes, August comes, and they then refinalise, naming a mainstream, saying, sorry, we couldn't actually find the special." And then
or they name a special school actually you really would not want your child to go to because it has a terrible reputation, and the reason why it has availability is because children have left that school in droves because they are unable to meet the need of the current cohort. So that's why there are spaces. And that's the other thing, if you are, even if you've gone to appeal and you've just said, just name me a school type, I can't find one at the moment, you're then at the mercy of the local authority just to say, okay, I found one for you, it's this school and this is where your child is going, and that's where your child will go. And it may be a school that, it can even be a school that you look at and you think, well, my child has got, and I had a conversation with a parent recently having done a draft check, and they said, oh, that my caseworker said that we're looking at an SEMH school, and I don't think that's right. What do you think? Well, the child has got significant difficulties with mental health, but this particular child's difficulties are depression, high anxiety, selective mutism. They withdraw within themselves and they get extremely distressed at loud noises, at shouting. All of these things, it will very much depend upon the type of SEMH school. And if that child was to go into a special school for children with social emotional mental health difficulties who present their dysregulation with physical dysregulation and violence in that way, and with verbal dysregulation that is significant, that's not the right school at all. But it fits under the same banner. So it's about looking at, it might be a particular type, but what type of type?
Yeah,
and
what type of type?
You have to really look at that, particularly for schools that do come under the banner of social emotional mental health. What type are you looking at? Which area are you covering, and does that reflect your child's individual needs? And like we say all the time, people say again, I've gone through my HCP with my school, and my SENCO says it's fine. Yusenko likes an EHCP that is really poorly specified and quantified, because they can spend that money anywhere at all. And also, the HCP is written uniquely for your child. It's not written for a school. The school has got to meet the needs, but they meet the needs of your child. Your child doesn't have to fit in with an EHCP that is written for the convenience of the school, the local authority have earmarked for them, because it's the one that is the cheapest. You know, there's a lot more to it.
I'm gonna just quietly flick this up in the background, because you're moving into it straight away, aren't you? You know, it's the wrong way round, isn't it? To select the school and then adapt the EHCP to fit what that school provides.
And the most important part of any EHCP is not section F, section B.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the need is not in section B, it doesn't exist as far as the HCP is concerned. And if it doesn't exist, there'll be no provision in section F. And if there's no provision, then that school placement doesn't have to have any specialist resources, staff, environment in order to meet that child's needs.
And yeah, I'm having a little giggle here, because I was doing a working document for I was reviewing a working document for a parent this week in a meeting, and the local authority case officer, tribunal officer, had helpfully put some comments down the side, and against one of the needs that the parent had put in and cross-referenced to a professional report, the local authority said, we're refusing to agree this need because there is no provision correlating to it. So we're not going to put the need in. I mean, talk about back to front. Yeah, you know, Sarah is always telling us the need, if every need is identified, there must be provision to meet every need. And then the school must be able to provide all the provision. And if all the way down that path, all needs, provision for all needs is properly quantified and specified, the school will be the right school. It's worth just bearing in mind, though, that the law says that the local authority must, and the judge will, name the cheapest, most cost efficient, the cheapest school that can meet needs. And as we've just said, meeting needs means providing the provision in F. So it's unlikely that you are going to win an appeal if the local authority have named a school that can provide all the provision in F. F is thorough, but it's just that you like another school better. That's not going to get you an appeal when the judge, it's public purse money. The judge has to name the cheapest that can provide the provision. And there absolutely is no duty to provide the best. It's got to be suitable, which means providing the provision in F. So do bear that in mind.
It's also that they have to provide all of it. Sometimes we see this again, and I unfortunately I had an annual review that I attended that the information hadn't been passed to either parent or school. The school had been allocated based upon the school agreeing that they couldn't provide all of section F, and the local authority went, okay, we're happy with that, we understand that, we're going to name you in school. You can name us as long as this is categorically stated that we can't provide all of this. We can provide this much. And the local authority went, yes, fine. What the local authority didn't say was that to the parent. So the parent didn't know that the place had been given on the basis that the school could not provide all of section F. We had an annual review. The parent has spent the past 6 months berating the school, emailing, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? And the school going, well, we can't. And the parent saying, but you must. And I know that you must. I know this is the law. The school saying, well, we can't. And then at annual review, it came out that actually neither party knew what either party had been told and what hadn't been told. And that is why you must make sure that the school can and will provide all of section F. It's not a pick and mix. It's not a choice. They have to provide everything that is in section F, and then that sort of spreads back out again to if the school can but won't, it is the local authority's responsibility to make sure that the school does, or you're in judicial review. But if the school can't meet need, then you have to have an annual review, and then you've got to say this school can't meet need, and having that school verify that and go, absolutely, we've done everything we possibly can, and we really can't do this. That really helps you if you're using that annual review. If like Anna's saying, if you give it a go and you think, actually, I am absolutely spent with this, I cannot face any more of it, it might be all right. I've got an EHCP. This may be, we may find that we can get through this. If you can't, you've got lived experience to say, look, we've tried it. We've got an EHCP. And if you've got a very good EHCP, you then say, we've got a really good school. I've got a really good EHCP. Look, my child can't attend, but their attainment gap is growing despite this, despite having really good staff, despite having people who are here to support me. We need to look at somewhere else, because if this school can't do it, I believe that no school of this type can do it. And that makes it very difficult for the local authority to turn around and go, actually, we're going to put you in another mainstream or another special. It's really hard because you've identified that you've given it a go and you've tried it, as opposed to saying, I don't believe that they can. And you may not believe that they can, but that's when you are in an appeal situation and you are arguing one thing over another. And unless you have significant evidence to state that that is a definite, that's where it can be difficult, can't it, Anna? Because you need to.
Yeah.
That's what you're evidencing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, let's just have a little whistle stop tour through a few blogs, just so you can help you find them on our site. Our blog library has grown massively, but we have recategorized it. They're much easier to find now. Every so often we keep having to recategorize because we just end up with too many in the same category and we have to split again. But you'll see this category, you can see it, go to them all, or you can go to categories across the top. This is what the annual review blog looks like. Worth having a look at if you're thinking about accepting a place you're not particularly happy about. If you've decided you're appealing, this blog will tell you a little bit more. Help, I'm not happy with the school named in my child's EHCP, but it does also talk through both options, the whether to appeal or not. It goes through, we're not going to go into lots of details tonight about how to appeal, because it's in the blogs and it's in the webinar. That blog will tell you exactly how long you've got, what to do, how to do it, when to do it. Go to the blogs and find them. Those are the key ones. Let's just have a little think, Sarah and I, whether there's anything else that we haven't said. I think there's one thing that's rattling around in my head, and then we will go to a few minutes of questions and answers. But as we said before, please, just questions that we haven't answered. So questions that we haven't discussed the answer to in this presentation. If there's anything we've missed, pop your hand up and get in a queue. We're not going to do questions from the chat because we can't be doing two things at once. But pop your hand up and we'll come to you in order. One thing I've been thinking about is there's still quite a lot of confusion over resource spaces. Just to be absolutely clear, a resource space is almost always a mainstream school. It's not a special school. Local authorities big it up. Oh, it's a specialist provision. Oh, it's special this. Oh, it's special that. It's not, unless it's registered with the DFE as a totally separate school. So separate head teacher, separate governing body, separate management structure, and registered as a separate school with a separate DFE number. It is a mainstream school. You will not get the resource space named in section I. You will get the mainstream school named in section I, and the provision that the resource space provides will be in section F of the plan. Okay,
and also when you're looking back at your section F of your EHCP, if you've been given a resource space and you are wanting to challenge that, one of the biggest things that I would recommend that you do is you have a look at section F. And if it says that your child struggles with transitions, that your child needs continuity, that they need to have the same peer group, that they struggle with change, then that can highlight that a resource base is not going to work, because the local authority will be looking, in the majority of cases, that the child will be travelling back into the main school for certain activities. That might just be lunch, it might be PE, it could be at any point. Not every child that attends a resource base will be in that resource base for the entirety of their school day. Local authority will be looking to gradually transition that child more and more back into that mainstream setting. So if your child struggles with transitions, think very carefully about how they're going to manage in that resource base. And resource bases can again be a melting pot for many different types of special educational needs and disabilities. And so therefore it can become a one size fits all situation, which for some children that works and they can manage within that. For other children, they do need to have a peer group of a similar age, stage and need to themselves, because otherwise it can be very disrupting for a child whose needs are very different. But the reason why they're in a resource base is because they're the HCP children.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now.